From the Poaton's fists that hit like a freaking truck to Israel Adesanya's warning to everyone who fights the Brazilian, here's why Alex Pereira will destroy Jan Blachowicz. First of all, I can't convince myself to bet against Pereira's hard hitting. It seems like a stupid thing to do. Don't just take my word for it though. Ask the fighters who've shared a ring with Pereira. Anyone taking a fight against the Poaton knows what to expect, but you don't quite know just how hard he punches until you get one flush to your body or face. Sean Strickland, the middleweight contender who got knocked out by Alex back in 2022, has been helping him prepare for his light heavyweight debut at UFC 291 against Blachowicz. Before one of their sparring sessions, Strickland jokingly asked Pereira to go a little easy on him, and then added that you can knock me out because this time he wouldn't be losing half of his paycheck.
Let's fight again. Don't knock me out this time. You can still knock me out. At least half my paycheck's not going to go.
Of course, the session was super friendly and nice, with Alex just feeling out Sean a little bit here and there, but by the time it was all over, Strickland couldn't believe what he'd experienced. Reflecting on the training that Tarzan talked about just how hard the Brazilian really hits. I mean, are you surprised? Just look at his nickname, Poaton. It literally translates to stone hands, a fitting name for his brutal striking. And if you want to see that devastating power at full swing, I'd suggest watching the highlights of his 2 fights in UFC against Israel Adesanya. Sean explained what makes Pereira so dangerous, saying that he has a chance to hit him and kick him, but he can't afford to get touched by Alex because as soon as that happens, you're dead. This isn't an exaggeration, and Blachowicz will realize that at UFC 291. I'm sure he isn't taking Pereira lightly. He'd be stupid to do that. But no matter how much you prepare for those strikes, hard hitters are always in the fight world because all they need is one great hit and the fight's over. The problem with Jan is how he's not too good at wrestling his opponents. He's looking for a way out if engaged in a wrestling contest, and that's where Pereira will fancy his chances. Look at his fight against Glover Teixeira, for instance, which was his first tap-out loss since back in 2007, if I remember correctly. Now the only reason he got outfought were the heavy strikes. Glover was always a heavy hitter with striking and submission attempts. Easily a nightmare scenario for Blachowicz, but he's still pretty good on the floor. And Pereira isn't that great at submitting his opponents, so he'll have to tackle only the big striking from Pereira. That's easier said than done, and the Polish star understands the task at hand. I'm sure he isn't looking forward to this fight at all, even though he's actually the favorite, and you can see why that's the case. Just look at their contrasting records, particularly in MMA. Pereira is no spring chicken, but even at 35 years of age, he's 5 years younger than Blachowicz. Yeah, John's been in the mixed martial arts scene for nearly 2 decades, and experience is definitely going to play a part in how this fight pans out. To understand the gulf, take a look at their fighting records. Blachowicz has lost as many matches as Pereira's ever played, and he's only been at the wrong end of a fight 9 times in his career. Yeah, this fight will be Pereira's 10th fight in MMA, while Blachowicz will be fighting for the 39th time in the octagon. The difference is staggering, but there's a reason why we love this sport, right? And that's because no matter what you bring to the table, one proper contact, and it's curtains. When talking about Alex, this particular threat becomes even more significant, because those knockout punches are exactly what he relies on, and someone as experienced as Jan will also be astounded by the power he carries. I don't need to explain just hard Blachowicz himself hits, and most fighters relying on their striking to win a fight would never acknowledge that someone can hit harder than them. But Pereira really is unique. The biggest fighters in the promotion give him the respect he deserves, because his striking is something we've never seen before in the UFC at least. And then you factor in his hunger to make a name for himself. There can be only one winner, and the way this fight is shaping up, I feel Pereira has the edge, even though most betting websites are backing Blachowicz to get the 30th win of his career. Pure skill and experience can't take you over the line at this level. You need to be motivated, and as big a motivator as money is, time tends to take its toll. Jan's 40 now, and his career is definitely inching toward retirement, and he's not as motivated to win fights as he was, say, a decade ago or so. The fire's still very much alive, but Poaton's desire crackles a bit more, for sure, and he's looking to make a name for himself in the promotion. Once that money hits the bank, you keep wanting more and more. Pereira's already hit the heights, becoming a division champ in the UFC. But that happened so quickly. And he lost his next fight to Israel Adesanya, so he never really got to enjoy his time as a champ. More importantly, he was never going to feel like a natural at that weight level, and light heavyweight suits him a lot more as he doesn't need to cut weight. That's why the light heavyweight is where he can dominate for years to come. All he needs to do is get this win and put his name in the list of challengers for the title. Poatan's task will get somewhat easier because he'll be able to dwarf Blachowicz too, and that's a massive surprise. Fighters like Jan aren't used to feeling short or small in the octagon. If you're towering over someone 6+ feet in height, then you're definitely a giant in the UFC. The Polish superstar isn't small by any stretch of the imagination. He stands at 6'1" and has a decent weight of around 93 kgs. That's the requirement for light heavyweight. But Pereira, on the other hand, is huge. He's nearly 6'4" and weighs around 100 kgs and will need to drop at least 7 kilograms more to take on Blachowicz. That's not going to be a problem for him, of course, because if you can dominate someone like Israel Adesanya for fun at middleweight, then you shouldn't have many problems doing the same to another former champ at light heavyweight. Remember his sparring session with Strickland? That's one of the things Sean noticed too, and he explained how inferior he felt to Pereira, who just towered over him throughout the fight. Psychologically, this plays a big part when you enter the ring with someone that big, and then it's a huge advantage during the fight as well, because he's got tremendous range while knowing how to take a punch. For me, the biggest problem for Blachowicz will be when his strikes don't produce the same impact that he's used to seeing. Think about it for a minute. You're used to sending people into another dimension with your punches, and then you come up against someone who has a solid chin. The minute Pereira survives his punch and lands one of his own, that'll kill a fighter like Blachowicz from the inside. Now I love how Alex uses his range, and he doesn't go nuts knowing he can outmuscle anyone in the division. He's sensible about it, keeping his distance but still landing those Hollywood blows. The ability to take a punch during all this makes him extra dangerous, and Jan will know his best bet is to take the fight to the ground. More importantly, people tend to underestimate Poatan's technical level because he's seen as a big hitter only, but this is someone who nearly defeated Adesanya twice in back-to-back fights. That wasn't only sheer power, it was his technical ability to go toe-to-toe with one of the greatest fighters in UFC history. And the last stylebender has warned all of Pereira's future opponents too. Right after getting his revenge on the Brazilian back in UFC 287, Adesanya wished Alex's future opponents good luck. The middleweight champ has known Pereira for a long time, having lost to him in kickboxing too, and he thinks that Poatan's going to be a nightmare at the 205-pound level. Check out what he had to say about him on his YouTube channel. Laughing with relief knowing that he won't have to fight this beast again in his life. He advised everyone else to take him down because that's your only bet against Pereira, and then wish them luck because they were going to need it. If one of the most technically smart fighters of all time is saying this about the Poatan, then you know he's going to be a handful. So from Adesanya's warning to Poatan's punches that hit like a truck, that's why Alex Pereira will destroy Jan Blachowicz.